One power, invisible, and you see it everywhere and every day. One power, indescribable, and you speak of it with every word you say. Mysterious until you know the truth. As simple as the love inside of you. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord, call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, angels' wings or heaven's door. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? It's the power of the love in you and me. One power, one power, one power, one power. We speak so many languages, different clothing, different colors, different names. The different is only dangerous when we forget that in the heart we're all the same. And we'll remember once we close our eyes to see that such distances were never meant to be. Call it God, call it Spirit, call it Jesus, call it Lord, call it Buddha, Baha'u'llah, Hashem or heaven's door. It's Muhammad, it's your mind, it's your soul, or it's your sign. It's the universe, it's music, Mother Earth or Father Time. But whatever name you give it, it's all one power, can't you see? Whatever name you give it, it's the very air we breathe. Oh, it's the power of the love in you and me. One power, oh, one power, one power is what we are. One power, one power. It's the freedom of forgiveness. It's the sweetness of release. It's the joy of inspiration. It's the sunshine on your face. It's the birthright of all nations. It's the boundlessness of space. It's the beauty of a baby, the serenity of sleep. It's the anger we abandon, for it's love that's most deep. and there's forever in you and me. It's the power of the love in you and me.
One power. That's all there is, and it's all there needs to be. Such is the nature of life that all it asks and all it wants is the opportunity to appear. You are that opportunity. So am I, and so it is. It's a great idea, and it's an idea that we speak here week after week after week, day after day at the Center for Spiritual Living Midtown. We're glad you've joined us today. We're glad you're with us both online and here in person. And I'm going to sneeze. Watch out. Catch the microphone. It's kind of chilly in here today, so we're adjusting accordingly. The sound people warned me that if I'm sneezing, I should let you all know so they can not make it better. Anyway, welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living Midtown. I'm so glad you're with us. We are a community that meets together here at the place at the rec center. I'll spit it out here in a minute. And we are a community that meets together online through Zoom, through all of our other avenues of social media. And we don't really know how big we are or how small we are because there are so many avenues out there where people are observing. Every week I hear about somebody else somewhere else in some other part of the world who has enjoyed us or felt like they're part of us by being on our broadcasts. So thank you for being here. Whoever you are, whatever your lifestyle, whatever your understanding of yourself in the world and how you name that, we celebrate you. And we celebrate you as in the version that you know yourself to be. You know, it's a cruel thing sometimes when people try to celebrate your good based on their idea of what it ought to be. Most of us have come from families that do that to some degree or another. The truth is, what matters is we celebrate you as you are and as you choose to be, not as someone else thinks. So we do that. We believe in you. We believe in this teaching. We believe that life is getting better and better for everyone. We have been part of a national organization, Centers for Spiritual Living, for a long time. And our motto in that group, or our vision, is a world that works for everyone. Awakening humanity to its spiritual magnificence in a world that works for everyone. And I think we're seeing progress in that as we live in this world. We went through a weekend where all the police departments got ready for big problems and big riots and big this and that. But it didn't happen. There were peaceful protests instead. The problems in our culture and our society are bubbling to the top to be seen and recognized and something different done about them. So I'm excited about the times that we live in. I'm excited about the place we live. So thank you for joining us. To know more about who we are, you can learn that through our website, cslmidtown.org, and our Declaration of Principle, which you'll hear right now. I believe
in one God,
one absolute power and first cause to all things.
I believe that this power is perfect love
and creates out of a desire to express love.
I believe all thought is creative, and how I choose to think creates my personal experience.
I believe in the unity of all life
and the immortality of the individual soul,
forever unfolding.
I believe
in the eternal goodness,
the eternal goodness of God,
the eternal loving kindness,
and the eternal givingness of God to all.
And so it is.
And so it is.
And so it is. So to know more about us, like I said, check us out on the website. Right now, we're going to hear from one of our practitioners. A practitioner in this organization is someone who knows this teaching, who knows how to support one another in this teaching, who have done it in a way that they changed their lives, and they can support you in changing yours and accomplishing what you wish to accomplish. So today we are hearing from one of our wonderful practitioners who's been a world traveler, and now she's kind of settled here in Atlanta, and that is the wonderful Maya Fuller.
Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Bob. Good morning, CSL Midtown. Today, the title of Dr. Bob's talk is How Do We Live Within This Great Power Some Call God? Well, one thing we can do is we can align our thinking with what Ernest Holmes called the law of good. We can do this by thinking positively, by thinking affirmatively, so that we can see manifested the good, happy, positive, prosperous outcomes that we desire in our body, life, world, and affairs. In the book, Living the Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes, which is a very good read, by the way, I highly recommend that you read it if you haven't already. It's a companion volume to the Science of Mind textbook. And this is actually the book that we are reading in the 10 a.m. discussion group. And you are invited to join us anytime. Just hop on CSL Midtown's Zoom link on Sunday morning and you're in. One of the first sections of this book is entitled Thinking Affirmatively. I'm going to read to you some of the excerpts of what Ernest Holmes says about it, beginning on page 18. He lays out 3 main points to guide us in getting good results through affirmative thinking. I'm going to read to you what those 3 points are, and then I'm going to read to you what he says about how we can use them. So he says, first, let us begin with the thought that we are all united with an invisible force which is creative, and that we are already one with the universal mind which can do anything. Next, he says, let us consider that we are centers within this mind, and that the sum total of all our thoughts is either silently attracting good to us or it is repelling it from us. And third, let us know that we can change our thinking, and in doing so, cause the law of good to act affirmatively for us instead of negatively against us. So he goes on to give us more details about these 3 points that he's making here about the power of affirmative thinking. He writes, let us start with the first proposition. We're surrounded by a creative mind which reacts to our thoughts. This is the basis of all faith and of all effective prayer, that we are surrounded by a creative mind which reacts to our thought. Jesus said simply and directly that there is a power that operates on your belief, the way you believe. Therefore, he added, be sure that you believe that you already have what you desire, and then the law of good will bring it to you. But Ernest Holmes says that even the law of good, which is all powerful, can bring you only as much good as you accept. The accepting is an act of your own mind. It is an act of faith. So he says our first proposition in thinking affirmatively is an act of faith. We must believe. It's natural to have faith and to believe, but when we find that we lack these qualities, we now know what to do about it, because belief and faith are mental attitudes. So we practice affirmative prayer daily by saying, I do have faith, I do have conviction, I do believe, I do know, and I understand that there is a power greater than I am. Thus, we're preparing our minds to pray affirmatively, which means to pray effectively. On to the second concept. He says that we are thinking and active centers in this mind, and the sum total of all our thoughts is either silently attracting good to us or repelling it from us. He talks about the fact that most of our thinking is unconscious. He says, here's where habit patterns of thought are laid down from infancy. And it should be our purpose to find out what these thought patterns are, and when they're unhappy or morbid or filled with fear, our job is to change them so that the natural, normal flow of the life force shall be resumed. He said that realizing that 90% of our thinking is unconscious, we should daily affirm that there is nothing in us that denies the good that we affirm, that every experience we have ever had which denies the good is wiped out of mind and memory, and that we are forgiven our mistakes and are encouraged to go on and do better. And then the third idea. He said that we can change our thinking, and in so doing so, cause the law of mind to act affirmatively for us instead of negatively. He says that Jesus gave us the perfect technique for doing this. Jesus told us that when our faith is in the good, it will obliterate evil. That is, good and evil, or the ideas of good and evil, are not equal powers. Good always overcomes evil, because good is real and evil is not. The affirmative attitude will always overcome the negative. This is why we are told to accentuate the positive and forget the negative. Just keep on thinking about peace and confusion, and let confusion go. Affirm the good and forget the evil. He says that this is a sound teaching. And so he just goes on and just tells us that whether we are working for ourselves or our family, our friends, or the whole world, every affirmative spiritual statement we make will have some power. So you don't have to prove it to anyone but yourself. He says that we have nothing to give to the world unless we have first proved it to ourselves. The blind cannot lead the blind, but alone with truth, one man, you, can pass from weakness into strength, from fear into faith, from defeat into success. And I say, and so it is. And now I just ask you all to relax and join me in an affirmative prayer that's found on page 13 of Living the Science of Mind, entitled Treatment for Health and Prosperity by Ernest Holmes. He writes this treatment in the first person, so please, I invite you to open your hearts to receive every word of it that resonates with your spirit. So as we settle into the stillness and silence of this powerful now moment, let us accept that this word is the presence, power, and activity of infinite mind in me. It is perfect in its action and permanent in its manifestation. Infinite intelligence governs, guides, directs, and sustains, and animates my life. The infinite mind knows no mistake. It is never discouraged. This mind is my mind now. All belief in fear, discouragement, disappointment, or failure is erased from my consciousness. I am forever supplied with every good thing, forever happy, radiant, well, and complete. This word establishes the law of wholeness and harmony throughout my entire being and in everything I do, say, or think. My life represents that which knows no limitation, is forever manifesting complete joy and freedom through me. Spirit daily provides me with everything necessary to my happiness, to my wholeness, and to my complete self-expression. Every organ, action, and function of my physical being represents this divine and perfect life manifesting within me. I am aware of my partnership with the infinite, and I know that everything which I do shall prosper. It is done. I accept. I believe. I know. And so it is.
Well, have you ever felt as if your light was overwhelmed by all the pressures that surround you and all the struggles that have found you? Well, now don't you hide your light. Take a chance and open wide. And you can be the change. You can be the change. You can be the change that you want to see, and the world will change if you be the change. If you be the change that you want to see in the world. Well, have you ever thought that you are powerless and flawed? Have you questioned, who am I? What can I do with one small life? Well, don't you hide your light. Bring it forth and let it shine. And you will be the change. You will be the change. You will be the change that you want to see, and the world will change if you be the change. If you be the change that you want to see in the world. Well, gather around this song, my friends. Sing it loud and raise your hands. And as we sing, we'll start to shine. We'll become a nation made of light. We will be the change. We will be the change. We will be the change that we want to see, and the world will change if we be the change. If we be the change that we want to see, and the world will change when we be the change. When we be the change that we want to see in the world.
Be the change. So the talk today is, how do we live in a world that we describe and we talk about? How do we live in a universe where we have this amazing power? We've talked about God as a power, as an energy, as a beingness in the world, not as something out there somewhere or someone out there somewhere. We've talked about how it works by working through us and by working for us, by working through us and by being operative in our thoughts and minds. And then the big question, and it's interesting, this question goes way back in philosophy, back as far as there's been philosophy, where at some point someone is saying, this is what the ideas are, this is the truth, how then shall we live? And that really is where we are today. How then shall we live? What shall we do? We say in this teaching all the time, there's a power for good in the universe greater than we are, and we can use it. A power for good in the universe greater than we are, and we can use it. But there's a flip side to that. There's a power for good in the universe greater than we are, and it can use us. And when I first heard that second part, I was like, no, I left religion. I already been through that religion where God will use you, but you're gonna have to suffer a lot first. You're gonna have to give up everything that matters to you, and you're gonna have to just, lay down your life, because your life doesn't matter, because the only thing that matters is what we tell you. We being whatever the church idea at the time was. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about this idea that the power for good in the universe is something you have to conjure up, or that it uses us by turning us into something other than who we are. but rather this amazing energy, this amazing power we call God, or spirit, or life, or infinite intelligence. That's a word I used to use a lot. I haven't used it much lately. Infinite intelligence. And we could use that. Well, how do we use it? There are kind of two sides to this. How do we use it, and how does it use us? So how we use it is setting intentions, a lot like what Maya was talking about. Setting intentions, positive thinking, creating these ideas within ourselves that we really believe in, and seeing them come forward and come forth into our everyday life. Most people who are listening to me at some point or other now have been through enough of this teaching, because I have a feeling from what we gather is that most of us who are participating here in our center are not new to New Thought, or we're not new to Science of Mind. So we know we've done the work. You've done your treatments and seen things change. You treated for prosperity and you saw it grow. You treated for health and saw that change and become different. I often tell the story that when I first walked in these rooms, I wasn't sure I was going to believe in any of it. I was pretty skeptical. I had been through some painful things with religion already. And so whenever they started talking about this thing called spiritual mind treatment, whatever that was, it sounded a little weird, like white coats coming to get you. But I decided to learn about it, so I bought a little pamphlet that said how to do a spiritual mind treatment, and I took it home and wrote a treatment that afternoon. I thought, I'm a bright, intelligent person. I don't need to go through a whole lot of classes to write a treatment. So I did, and I wrote a treatment around sinus trouble. It's interesting, I'm sitting up here sniffing now, so I guess telling the story I anticipated set myself up here. But at that point in my life, and I was in my early 30s, or somewhere in my 30s, I had never really breathed freely through my nose, even on medication. I mean, the medication would help, and sometimes I could get an opening so I could breathe through my nose. But for the most part, I had always had hay fever and sinus reactions and all this kind of stuff. And so I wrote a spiritual mind treatment, and I affirmed that my sinuses are lined with Teflon. Nothing out there in the universe does harm to me. There's nothing to do harm to me or that I could do harm to. All that I breathe in passes through me and into me in wholeness and fullness and out without causing any irritation whatsoever. I thought, if that don't get it, then this is a bunch of hooey and I don't need to have anything else to do with it. So what I did was I wrote that down. I put it in the front of a little journal that I was using for daily readings, and I read it every day because I wasn't going to waste time on this thing. It's like this thing called Science of Mind, whatever it is. I was pretty skeptical. I was one of those people that came late and left early, so nobody could talk to me in the beginning, and so I read my little thing every day. And I was already into meditation then, so it was sort of related to that. And about 5 or 6 weeks later, I noticed that I had stopped taking any of the medication for sinus stuff. And then I also was aware that I was breathing through my nose. I would wake up in the morning and I could take a deep breath, and I didn't have to always breathe through my mouth, which meant I wasn't drooling nearly as badly on pillows and things. So I went, wow, there is something to this power for good in the universe, and I can use it. And I can use it for my own health. I can use it for health work with other people, which I've done much of as I learn more and more about the teaching. So part of the way we learn to use it is by learning how to think differently in a positive, powerful way. And that's all a spiritual mind treatment is. It's an argument with ourselves to talk us into something that we already wanted to believe anyway. It's also that I learned a lot about cleaning up my thinking as a way to use this power. Treating for that wonderful, perfect relationship, and then talking bad about, anybody I thought might be available. You know, want a relationship that's going to take care of me the rest of my life, but rich people are not people to be trusted or part of or any of that. I mean, just all sorts of ways in which we contradict ourselves in our minds. I'm just throwing these out as examples because those contradictions get in the way of allowing the Spirit, this one power, to do for us what we say we want. Because the only way it can know that is by what we believe in and what we keep saying to ourselves and believing about ourselves. So we begin to train and retrain our minds to know these truths, to speak the truth, to claim prosperity. You know, and a lot of people in the world right now are struggling. A lot of people in this country are struggling because things are a little shaky. But you know what? Those of us in this country are so much richer than many, 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 many people in the world. There's some things online that you can do that can measure your income versus the rest of the population, and you see just how rich we really are. But even with that, to feel that richness, we've got to be able to see it and focus on it and appreciate it. You know? And so by appreciating it, we activate an even greater, stronger idea of this good that we desire. And that power for good in the universe that is greater than we are says yes, because that's all it can say. That's why it's so difficult when you say, well, I want this, but I can have just enough. So that power says, yes, I want this, but I don't think I deserve it. And the power says yes. So we get that all that constant thing. So it's a really, in terms of using it, what I begin to learn and what I learn and what I'm still teaching is the idea that we get clearer and clearer in our thinking, and that power activates in the world around us and brings those things into our lives which we are naming and desiring. Greater health, greater wealth, wonderful relationships, and rich opportunities to give our gifts in what people call work. Now, the flip side of this is it can use you. And as I said, it ain't a bad thing. It doesn't turn you into something other than who you are. It uses you. And the way you know how to volunteer for that using, for that divine power to move in you and through you and use you, is what do you desire? What's your passion? What's your heart calling you to? And it says, this universal power, there, go be that. Yes, that's what I want to use you to do. I want to use you to be an artist. I want to use you to be a singer. I want to use you to be a construction worker. I want to use you to be a happy person. I want to use you to do all of it. Or I want to use you to be a miserable person. You know, some people really enjoy their misery. I had an aunt and uncle who fought, dish-breaking, screaming fights their whole marriage. And when he died, I thought my aunt was going to be so pleased because she had called him every name I had learned, all the cuss words from them watching them fight. And you know what? She was devastated because she so loved and cherished him. But a big part of what she cherished was that somewhere where she could safely fight. And I'm like, well, that's a little interesting. Universe said, yes, I'll use you to be the one to fight. That's what you want to do. Didn't do harm to anyone but the two of them, maybe their kids, maybe their nieces and nephews a little bit, but we survived. So it's about saying, it's using us to be that which we want to be anyway, and what we like to have as our highest and greatest good. Another way that you can see how it's using you is as you allow yourself to grow through the stages of life and you emerge into greater and greater expressions of good, and sometimes different. The things that I thought were fabulous a few years ago, I'm not so keen on right now. I wanted to live in New York City when I was in my 20s. I thought it would be the hottest, fastest, most fabulous thing in the world. Well, in my 50s and 60s, I lived in Philadelphia. That was just down the road from New York, and I made a lot of trips up there to see plays and whatever. And I got very clear, I didn't want to live in New York. It was fine for me. It would have been fine for me in my 20s, but it wasn't fine for me at that age because it just wasn't a value I carried anymore. And so this divine energy moving through us didn't put me there. It didn't say, oh, yeah, but you wanted this in your 20s, so you got to go do it now no matter what. Well, a lot of us get in trouble when we start thinking we have to carry those values and those desires over the various ages. And when we get to wherever we are, whoever we are, we forget sometimes that I get to choose now, today, who I am to be, not based on something I had in the past and never got. So this thing can use us by helping us to become that which we desire to be. So it's like a big loop. You know, on the one hand, we're using it by declaring and claiming that which we want, and at the same time, it's using us by helping us to become that which we have declared. And it's a natural process. There's another part to this, and that is that whole, in that receiving and becoming, there's something called emergence. And it's that law that says, that spiritual law that says, we are already designed to become that which we desire to be our greatest good. It's already built into us. We don't have to make anything happen. What we have to do is align with it in a way that allows it and allows us to simply grow naturally into who we are. I learned this really young. When I first moved to my third school in the second grade, and I was kind of enamored by a couple of kids that sat on the front row. I sat in the back because I was the new kid and I was scared to death. But I thought, you know, those are some folks I would love to be friends with. And through some magic that I didn't understand at the time, I'm sure I did it in my paying attention, but I had no self-awareness at that point. We became best buddies and best friends, and we're all the way through high school and still to this day. If I got into trouble, or if I needed some help, or if I needed to reach out to someone I know I could count on, one of those people would be it. And actually, there are a couple of people from those days. We don't talk to each other very often. We don't need to. We know that solid ground is there. How that happened? It just emerged. Because it's a natural process for those kinds of things to go on. So here we have it. It's using us. We're using it. We declare our truth, prosperity, greatness, goodness, and all of that. Then my question to you and to myself, and this is the one that just knocked me out of my chair this morning as I was getting ready for this talk, because I thought, why am I feeling uncomfortable about speaking about this? And I realized in some ways, given all that we have been through in the last 3 or 4 years, COVID, lockdown, you got to wear a mask, not going to wear a mask, all of those conversations and happenings, it's easy for us. I think it's become easy to lose faith, to lose hope, to lose the idea that these things really work. And we say the words, you know, Ernest Holmes says in this chapter in the textbook, that the biggest challenge we have in our teaching is that we can philosophize about it, we can talk about it, we can theorize about it, but where the breakdown comes is in the practice. And, you know, when you're being told by systems and the fears around health and the fears around all these other things that we're being hit with lately, how terrible it all is and how you better be careful and how you better listen to us and do what we tell you, it's easy to forget that these practices still work. That these practices still hold out the possibility, not just the possibility, but the absolute certainty of providing the lives that we desire. And maybe that's more of a confession than I need to be making, but I want to tell you that's what was holding me back from wanting to do this talk. Because I started to see the places in my life where, not my life, I only have one, where I began to tolerate some things that I wouldn't have tolerated 20 years ago, or even 6 years ago. I began to tolerate some beliefs that there are things in my health that I have no control over. COVID, oh my God, we had no control over. They said stay home, and all of a sudden, all the traffic stopped in the metro Atlanta. I lived right next to one of the busiest streets, and it was amazing. I woke up in the morning that day, and it was quiet. No roaring traffic, and it was a strange new world. There's been a lot of written about how the animals came back out and things showed up differently and all of that over those years. And you all were here, you remember it. But something about having that freedom pulled away, as it seemed, has, I think, for many, many people in our country contributed, maybe our whole world, contributed to a loss of sense of personal power and individual responsibility. It was taken away. And I'm not making this is not a political statement about masking or not masking or gun carrying or not gun carrying, none of that. This is about back to our basic human beliefs about who and what we are. So I've made a pledge to myself to get back to these basic practices, to get back to absolutely standing in the truth that I always have, or I have for the last 20 years, that there's a powerful good in the universe that I can use it. But I got to do it. You know, the old funny story, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Well, you take an airplane from Atlanta and you fly up to LaGuardia if you're not too lucky, and maybe JFK if you're a little more lucky, and then you figure out all the ways to get downtown to Manhattan, and then you get the buses and blah, blah, blah. But you know that's not the real answer. The answer is, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, 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 practice. That's how you get there. How do you get to that life of freedom, that life where you, regardless of what's happening in the world around us, that we feel alive and in charge and on top of things? How do we get there? Practice. Old-fashioned for some of us, if we've been around a while. Things like you start your morning by naming what is my ideal day today. Not what's going to be done and what's going to happen to me, but my ideal experience of this day. Today I want to have joy. Today I want to have freedom. My phone is responding. Today I want to have the opportunity to love somebody, to touch a life in some way. I mean, whatever that is for you. Today I want to get the dishes done without hating it. I mean, that might be a start. On some days it is for me. Start your day with an affirmation of what do I want to accomplish today, and what does this power for good in the universe do? It says, okay, we'll support that. And I'm going to move through you to become a better housekeeper, or whatever else your version of that is. And see, what's so important then is that we start keeping track in our minds and on paper of those times when that happens. When you declare your truth, you declare your desire, you recognize what you want to have a greater experience of, and then it occurs. One of the things that happens over time, for those of us who've been in this teaching a long time, is that it happens so much, it becomes kind of automatic. And we, quote, take it for granted. which simply means not paying attention to it and not valuing it for what it really is. And when that happens, we can not realize how much it is already going on. Think about your day to day. Think about the last week. What have you declared as a good truth and a greater experience that you wanted to have for yourself that actually happened and showed up? When I ask myself that question, I realize, I don't think about that nearly as often as I used to. I used to pay attention. And boy, when I did, I had a lot of excitement and energy. Simple things like driving down the road and feeling a nudge to turn right instead of left. And then discovering something I'd been looking for a long time and didn't know that it was right there. It's like, wow, there it is. Been wanting to meet some people and get to know more people in my community. And yesterday, I'm going to the garbage with my garbage, and I throw it in, and I pick up my mail. And there are a couple of people outside that I see every time I walk to the garbage I've never spoken to. And I thought, well, Bob, you've been saying you want to meet these people. So I walked over and said hello. And I have 2 new acquaintances. Maybe they'll become friends, maybe not. But it started. And I normally wouldn't even note that. But preparing for this talk makes me stop and think and bless and say, this is good. Hallelujah. To use an old phrase I don't often. So I invite you, as we are coming to the completion of this Roots month, getting back to our roots, back to our basics, do it. That's all. Just do it. Get back to the basics and not just thinking about it and talking about it and theorizing about it, but do it. Write your daily affirmations. Read something every morning from some text or some idea that lifts you up and gives you a better idea of life. If something is calling to you that is for yours to do out in the world, go for it. Because you've got a power for good in the universe that is greater than you are working on your behalf, and it will take you to that place of your desire. I said that without doubt before COVID. And I let COVID doubt me, turn me into some doubt over the last 3 years. And I'm standing before you today to say I'm done with that nonsense. So I invite you to join me in that. The only reason this room is not packed and we don't have them hanging out the windows is the rest of the world doesn't yet know how valuable and important this basic teaching is to changing our lives and changing our world. We do live in a world of magnificent people, in a world that can work for everyone according to their idea of their greatest good. But we got to make it happen and not just talk about it. And that's the truth. So help me. Thank you. You're wonderful. So am I. And so it is. And now Vance is going to come talk to us about prosperity. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Bob. It's an awesome talk. And so for those of you here and online, go to the YouTube page, go to the YouTube channel, search for CSL Midtown, and follow us. That would be one reason to create more prosperity and abundance for us to share and spread this message out into the world. And if you want to give online, we'll have the QR code, but you can go to cslmidtown.org, and on there is a donate button. There's a QR code here on the screen, and you can take that. It'll take you right to the donate portion of our site. So if you will, read with me our affirmation of prosperity. I live in a universe of abundance. As I freely and joyfully give, I join in the divine flow, and all that I share with life returns to me multiplied abundantly. And so it is. And now, back to Dr. Bob for some more announcements.
Thank you, Vance. Our everything guy. He's our sound and takes care of all of it for us. Thank you so much. So next month, we're going to jump into a balanced life. We're going to talk about how this stuff we're talking about today can actually be used in a way to improve our health, our relationships, our work, and our prosperity. One a Sunday. We're going to go a little deeper, dig into how you can do some of these things. So we're really getting down to the practicals for this year and definitely for this coming month. Also want to let you know that we started the Prosperity Plus Class 2 on Wednesday. And we have one person joining us this Wednesday. So I decided, wait, why hold it? Why close it? So we are reopening registration. If you would like to join that class, there is still time. Go to our website and you'll find the information on it. Connie, who's our administrator, is sitting back there grinning at me because she has to do the work to reopen the registration. And we're going to do that. It's not a hard thing. And would welcome anyone who'd like to join this, even though it's a week behind or a week late. We'll catch you up and we'll give you the opportunity to really put these practices I'm talking about to work around the area of prosperity or any area of your life. But it's a systematic, supported way to really start using these principles to prove to yourself, because that's the only person you got to convince, that it works and it works for you. So if you can, if you want to, and if you desire to, join us. All of the information about it is there online. And I think that kind of wraps up our announcements. So thank you so much. Join me, if you will, in our closing, which says, I leave this place now knowing something better than I knew before. I go forth into the world with a heart full of love and a mind full of good sense. I look at the world in a greater way, knowing that I have within me everything I need to create the life I desire. I give thanks for this understanding, and I am grateful for the spirit of life that lives through me, and so it is. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you.